Hello, lovers and friends. Welcome to this episode. We have a beautiful, beautiful embodied goddess here today to bring you some wisdom as we spill the tea all around alchemy, creativity, and power, as well as some identity transformations and shifts that you may or may not know of about myself as well as my guest. I want to introduce you all to Loralei Bayette. I think I said that properly. She's a creative alchemist, transforming visionary ideas into tangible realities. She specializes in guiding entrepreneurs with artist souls through an intuitive business approach that honors their unique way of working. Through deep listening and somatic awareness, she helps clients tap into their innate wisdom to make aligned decisions. We could all use that, can't we? Absolutely. Lorelei's signature blend is strategy along with nervous system integration, energetic attunement, and that helps to not only guide, but enable all the leaders that she works with to create magnetic offers that really amplify their authentic voice, naturally attracting their ideal audience with maximum impact and revenue. I found Lorelei online myself on IG, and I'll tell you a little bit more about our story that we'll break into once we welcome her to the show. Welcome, welcome, my love.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. And you don't really know, and I didn't really know up until last week, that we actually have several sisters, soul sisters, I found out that were closer to your journey and that have been a part of my journey. One being Miss Mia Magic, who I have
Mm,
known for over a decade and have seen her through many alchemy and identity transformations as she has now become known as Mia Magic. And that has been a girl, soul sister. We've been rolling through this journey together of identity shifts galore. And also beautiful, beautiful Rita. Rita has also stepped into her soul sisterhood circles. And I knew her before when she was in her, more of her fitness identity and marketing hat. And she has totally blossomed into such a powerful facilitator and medicine woman. And that to me was like, oh, there's a reason why I was pulled to this woman when I saw your
mm,
video online.
yeah, those two women are very sincere, grounded, brilliant, and genuine, safe women. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I saw you online, I had come across a reel and you were speaking very eloquently, very powerfully, but also in a way that was, again, very safe and very grounded and rooted in regards to owning your power as a woman and dropping disempowering identities and stories, especially being a woman of color, to
Mm,
transcend. We can own our stories, but we need to also transcend them in order to not create a life where life is reflecting back that identity to us as a woman of color who is repressed or suppressed. And that was actually how I found you originally, was
mm,
through that. And then I just kind of followed the trails. And like you said, like I said in your bio, I felt drawn and attracted to you based on your frequency and your energy. And then I looked into your message and I started looking at your story and seeing all the transformations. And I wanted to
mm,
bring you on the show because I would love to talk about, the journey of coming home to our creative power and being able to
mm,
not only create our own reality, but transcend other realities that we have lived in or have identified so deeply as our truest reality. And I've witnessed and have seen some of the transformational work you've done. And before we
mm.
get into all the juiciness, I'd love to know, how did you first begin your journey into the coaching space and the healing space, and how for you has that also began to transform to maybe even some of where you are today?
Yeah, so I started off with a psychology degree and I realized the limitations of it. Something that I cultivated at a very early age is my own inner knowing because of how I was brought up. And so, even though I was receptive and really excelling in my psychology degree, there was a subtle dissonance that felt incomplete. And it wasn't until I hired my first therapist, who was very spiritual, very mystical, that the dots started connecting. That's when I saw true transformation It was when
Mm,
I married the psychology with the spiritual components, and I discovered my power and I had my awakening. When I had that awakening, that, oh my gosh, I was 24 years old and I'll never forget it. I was sitting on my bed and I felt in that moment, all these moments leading up to this one moment that said, nothing outside of me can change until the inside of me changes. That was so profound for me at the moment that it shattered my reality, and I had to share it with everybody. I had
mm,
to. It just became a part of who I was. And I started coaching people early on. And then it wasn't until I lost my job that I actually went full in on my own business. And that's when I started, doing empowerment coaching, self-love, feminine embodiment, which then turned into me helping people become six-figure and multiple six-figure entrepreneurs. And now I'm at a stage where I am really honoring the entrepreneur with an artist's soul because of the future that I think that we're creating together. So it's evolved
mm.
over time.
Mm. And we'll get into some of that because it's those that are listening in my community are creatives, entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives that also feel really drawn to the feminine component, which is a
Mhm.
lot of creativity. And so I'm sure they would gain a lot of value on the inside of what that journey was like. But I'd be curious to know, what was the job you were doing before you made the shift?
So first I was in TV production. I was a personal trainer. I was a holistic health coach. I was doing all the things. You know the journey. Every facilitator has the journey. They were like a personal trainer or a health coach or like
Yep.
something. And
Yep.
I was working as a full-time executive coach at an engineering company. They called me the flow engineer. I really
Oh.
believed that they needed a feminine perspective in that space. It was a small team of 5 people where I helped triple the revenue there. And I helped
Mm,
also implement relational skills that allowed us to grow that company and the interpersonal relationships within the team. I didn't really
mm,
know that I knew what I was doing, but I started off as an assistant, and then they kind of just elevated me from there, where I had my own office and I was an executive coach. And honestly, I got way too comfortable there. And so, Spirit Source, God was like, whoop, we're about to dismantle your whole reality because you're not going to move. This is too comfortable for you. It was pretty ideal.
Yeah, it sounds like you got, like, in a way you get everything that it is that we would want, like what society tells us we should want, right? Like the office, the benefits of running a team. I know for me, I don't know if you know much about my background, but I used to work with Cindy Crawford and a bunch of other celebrity branding developments. And similarly, I ended up working my way through the boutique company from a smaller position to right under the VP and the president. And I got my corner office completely covered in windows, overlooking the river in Studio City. I would like see hawks flying over, but it was like a jail because I couldn't live my life. I couldn't be in my purpose. And I like got there and, like you said, it was so cozy, so comfortable that it wasn't actually like lighting up the drive. And I love what you
Yeah.
said is like something happens, spirit's like, hey girl, yeah, so you're not going to keep growing here, right? You're
Yeah.
real cozy. What was that transition like for you when you were like, it hit me?
It was my Saturn return.
Oh my
All hell
God.
broke loose. All hell broke loose, honey. I'm not even going to go into the details. You can hear it on a million other podcasts.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
heavy. Every corner, every bit of my life was transformed, and everything that I knew that I believed was tested during that time, because not only did I lose my job, but I lost my father. I had a
Mm,
breakup. I significantly reduced the kind of revenue that I was making for a season of time. Um, and other tragedies happened all within a year. And everything I thought I believed was tested. Do you
mm,
really believe you co-create your reality? Do you really believe that spirits transition and you can still communicate with them? What do you really believe? And so it was like my rite of passage
yeah.
into what I was supposed to be doing in this world. Yeah, it was pretty intense, but it was the most beautiful thing that I've ever gone through, because the person that I became after that, the level of intimacy and creativity and connection and relationship, I went from manifestation to co-creation. Manifestation was about me asserting my power and getting what I want, which I think is a beautiful part of the process, to co-creation, which means I'm in a relationship with all that is. I'm in a relationship with God. I'm not just creating this on my own, and this is a partnership. And that couldn't have been done unless my heart was broken open and shattered by grief to where it remained open and receptive and connected in that way.
Mm,
So it was
mm,
tragic, but beautiful at the same time.
mm. Tragic and also absolutely triumphant, right? And that's taking the tragedy and really using it as that fuel to your success. And I'm sorry to hear, it's two parts, right? Because a part of me is like, I'm so sorry to hear that you went through all of that, because again, the suffering that we go through in these initiations, it's fucking brutal. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's just dragging our ass in the mud, and the pain, the emotional, the spiritual pain sometimes can be even more deep and painful than the physical pain, right? Like of losing, your father, and the grief that we can go on in that journey. And then another part of me is like, fuck yes, girl, you earned it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's like the two parts. It's like the humanness and the compassion and the, my gosh, I never want anyone to experience that. And then there's also the part of me that's like on a high priestess level with the terminology of initiation, is like, fuck yes, you walked through the fire and you didn't get burned into ashes. You became the fire, you
Mm-hmm.
transformed. And the fact that you elevated your consciousness and your power to one of deeper, what I'm hearing is like also deeper obedience into the
Mm-hmm.
listening and the knowing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
talk about using creativity of how you're shaping the situation, because so many could look at that with a disempowering lens, or could look at that in a victim lens. But what I'm hearing that I want to give a name to, and tell me if this is accurate, is I'm giving a name to how I'm hearing how this expression was actually an act of not only freedom, but an act of using your creativity for a higher state of liberation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that that segment of my life was intimacy and the importance of it. And I didn't realize that intimacy and creativity are two sides of the
Mm.
same coin. They're so interconnected that it bridged that gap for me. I'm not just creating and I'm not just being relational. My creativity is relational. My creativity is deep intimacy. I was able to go way deeper in my process at that time. Um, one of many, transformations. I feel like when you are born to do this work, they just get faster and you just alchemize faster. Cause I'm like, when does it stop?
Yeah. Lessons are over. I've learned enough. I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. Can't we just have like a baseline of goodness for a while before another lesson comes in? I feel you on that. I totally, totally feel you on that. Right.
Because we're having to like keep up with the collective shifts as well. It's not just the shifts that I'm going through. Now I'm okay. I feel like I'm like one of those characters in those games. I'm like, all right, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're just like ready, right? You're employed with all your tools. And then like the collective is shifting. You're like, okay, can I hold this? Can I tap into this? What do I do with this information? That's where I feel
Yep.
like we are right now. A big collective shift.
Absolutely. So it's like, can we get a mushroom boost? Like the Mario games. Like, let me get a mushroom booster. Let's go. If we're talking about the collective shift, because that mushroom Mario boost is happening in the collective. So I
Right.
feel like that's also helping the collective, and in a way, where you're right, we are up leveling as a collective, but we're also massively shedding as a collective. And so much is unearthing, like the density in the mud that's been like stuck as a collective has started to transition and unearth, especially now we're in this Aquarian age as we've transitioned out of the Piscean age. So the whole gurus and talking heads and one way and one path, again, that could be considered religious, that could be considered, very dogmatic belief systems. Any way that's so linear, it's like that is all being ripped away right now as we're moving and have moved officially into the Aquarian age for the next 2,300 years, which that's our whole lifetime. it's really about the beehive energetics, the collective energetics, the working together, the coming together. And what you're saying as well, it's the co-creation, our ability to co-create. And I love the tie that you're putting it with intimacy. I've actually never heard it before in that way. And I think that's a really cool way to look at it, because it is you are intimately in love and in creation and in connection with whatever it is that you are creating, whether it's your beliefs, right, or your latte in the morning, or your god, or your business, or your lover, or your body, right? We are always in that intimate relationship. And for those that are maybe newer to the path of this kind of conversation, of the understanding of, creativity and intimacy and the intertwine, how did you start to take like realistic kind of shifts in not only trusting that, but living it, practicing it, like weaving it in and starting to shape your reality in a way where this is now at the forefront of your beliefs?
It first started off with me it's all relational. Whether you're Christian or you're this or you're that, doesn't matter. It impacts your ability to be relational, impacts your ability to be relational with the spiritual force that you relate to, right?
Yes.
So the more that I was able to, number one, first and foremost, cultivate my own agency, my own trust with my body, my own relationship to my own inner knowing, I was able to walk in a room and be in the room as a relaxed, authentic vessel that's open and available. And that made me one part of the pie, right? One part of the two, right?
Yep.
Whatever I'm relating with. Once I was empowered on my own, and let me just break that down to be even more simple.
Yeah.
Step one, if you're just starting out, how often are you operating from what I call figure it out consciousness, meaning you're operating from your mind versus operating from a state of allowing in your body? Because you don't need to go back and heal this and heal that and dig up this and fix that to have direct access to your present moment knowing. It just requires that you stop, drop, and attune into your body. And you get yourself into a state of allowing, which means that you relax your body. You shift your physiology with the breath, and you release all thoughts, all intentions, all urgencies, and you just allow the answer to come to you. That knowing is always available to you. And what might take you 5 minutes to get in this moment might take you 2 seconds to get as you continue to practice. And how often can you be in a practice to be a body-led woman who's in a state of allowing versus shooting up into survival consciousness or into your figure it out consciousness? I got to figure this out and I got to understand this, because when you're in that consciousness, you're forgetting that you're co-creating with an intelligence that's bigger than you. You are
Mm.
co-creating with God. You are not alone. And I believe that our bodies are these intelligent uh, operating systems that are always connected to that infinite intelligence. They're always connected to God, always. So if you can start trusting that and following through on that, I call it micro moment obedience. How obedient can I be every single micro moment to, okay, body, what do you want me to know next? What's next? What's next? If you can follow that, now you're putting yourself in a position where you are one empowered part of the collective, where now you can be in right relationship with other people. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That definitely makes sense.
So that was my first step, is like really becoming a body-led woman. And just to make this clear, I still go into survival. I still go into reactor consciousness. I still find myself in negative momentum. I just have the tools to deliberately move into a place where I'm being led versus operating from survival.
There we go. Yes. That's
Yeah,
really
I just
important to name. Yeah.
yeah, because I don't want people thinking like there's this lie that we always have to be high vibe or that we
Yep.
always have to like, oh, I'm in co-creator consciousness now. Like I'm a creator, that ignores the whole scope of what this is about.
I think there's an interesting piece that I wanted
Mhm.
to kind of come through that's coming through as well to also, I think, importantly name. There's also the difference, in my opinion, and what I've seen as well is there can be a journey where, and again, I've helped women and I've seen women in my circle who've also gone into, creative co-creative consciousness, but it's also been masked in a way of I am God itself, I am almighty, I am this. And again, whatever the beliefs, I'm just speaking to an experience that I have seen and had and have helped women with where they forget it's like I'm co-creating with the universe and I'm co-creating, but there's still demands. There's still like we're co-creating this, right? Just like a relationship. And I'm demanding this happen. Why isn't it happen? I'm co-creating, I'm co-creating, I'm co-creating. And I just wanted to kind of voice that there it's nuanced and it gets more and more refined as you get into the higher game of really body awareness and body attunement. But for those that are, let's say, spiritually bypassing, right? Because in spiritual psychology, we call this spiritual bypassing. For those that spiritually bypass the work that you're speaking about, and we're going to go deeper into, which is actually to get embodied, which is where source is in the body, as you're speaking to, right? And God is also in our minds. It's not getting out of the body disembodied to go just into imagination and co-creation and still creating from outside of self. I would say it's important to note the importance of this conversation of like it's bringing your body with and as a vital key part of the co-creation process.
Yeah, definitely. That the body is the vessel. And my work is to be an open and receptive vessel. It's not to try to force or impose my will. How I defined personally co-creation is when I take my personal will, my free will, and I
Yeah.
merge it with God's will. And that's what co-creation is. And just to speak to what you were saying, this is why the most practical aspects of learning relational skills are important. The same way that you approach your creative process, co-creating with God, is the same way you approach your relationships. You have that anxious mentality. Do you have an anxious attachment? Are
Mhm.
you are you demanding? Are you expecting? Are you feeling upset when your expectations aren't met? Are you unable to regulate when your partner's in front of you and telling you something that you do not want to hear, that you do not want to
Mhm.
receive? There's no
Mhm.
separation. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And so that's what I meant by intimacy and creativity are two sides of the same coin because it's a
Yes.
relational act. You can say, we can call it, that's the problem with words is that we can call it something and
Yeah.
everyone has their own definition for it, right? Because that's not co creating, is if you're imposing your will. You are trying to create something using your will. You're not actually being the vessel and the conduit, and you're not listening. Everybody's praying, but nobody's listening. How many people
Mm,
pray,
mm, mm.
but you're not listening? When I ask a question, I assume it's going to be answered. I'm not just asking a question. I'm saying, show me. My eyes are peeled. I'm looking for patterns in my reality. I'm looking for the nudges. I'm listening. I'm obedient. It doesn't make sense, but I'm always in relationship. There's no disconnect there. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? Unless I'm in a survival state, then you can get, there's caveats to that.
Yeah.
But
Do you have a prayer that you use? I know I have a prayer I use in the morning, which helps me to be that clear channel, which I would be happy to share. But I'd be curious, do you have a particular practice that you do, whether it's in that moment when you're looking for guidance, or is it something that you do to prime your day? Do you have like a morning ritual that helps you to drop into that state of asking and receiving and receptivity?
of the two-part answer,
Yeah.
the first job that I have is I live a creative lifestyle. And I live not only a creative lifestyle, but a co-creative lifestyle, which means that part of my hygiene, part of my practice is to be as receptive of a vessel as I can. So on a daily basis, I have to be checking where am I at vibrationally? Am I am I am I complaining? Am I judging? Am I criticizing? Am I
Mm-hmm.
using my creative power to project onto the future negativity? Am I using my creative power to project on the future at all? How am I using my creative power, and can I recall my energy, and can I change the channel? Because what happens when we practice appreciation, we practice seeing the things that we do like, when we starve the negative, when we deactivate that negative frequency, we start to have access to more clarity. We can hear better. Have you noticed that? That's why geniuses or musicians, it's not in a state of forcing or trying or complaining that they find their greatest art or their idea. The ideas don't find them in that place. That the ideas find them in the present moment. The ideas
Mm-hmm.
find them in a state of suspension. And
Yes.
so my job is to be in that state as much as possible. So it's a constant cultivation. It's a lifestyle that I have. And then the second part of that is I think that my practices are micro practices that are infused. I don't really I sit down to write, I sit down to meditate, sure, but I don't really have these practices that I sit down and do necessarily. They're more of a, like I said, a moment to moment conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I know that spirit is always there. So I just ask a quick question. Whatever you're worried about, it could just be a conversation, right? When you know that your body is an instrument for discernment, it's an instrument for receiving. When you know that you always have that knowing there, then you just ask the question, spirit, on a very tangible level for the entrepreneurs, show me how to get the clients. Spirit, what's my next offer? God, show me. And then your job is to listen. And it's not to listen for that direct answer, it's to listen, period. And what that looks like is I'm going to close my laptop. My body's telling me to close the laptop and go to the beach. Okay. Okay, now I'm being called to sit down and do this thing I've been putting off. Okay. Now I'm being called to just things that don't make sense, but somehow through that micro moment obedience to listening, you find yourself in the unfolding. There have been marketing strategies I could have never come up with that led to successful programs that I've created because of this very thing that I'm telling you about. Not because I know about marketing, I know about messaging, I know about how to articulate, I know about magnetism, I know about all of that. But when I'm co-creating with spirit and I'm listening, you can tell because it's the most genius marketing strategy that I could have ever. I'm like, even I'm surprised. I'm surprised with everybody else. I'm like, oh my God, that was, yes, what was that? So yeah.
Oh my God. I love this. And I love the joy that you're emitting from sharing this as well. Like, right. It's such good medicine and it's such good truth, especially for creatives where there's so much frustration that can come through with the creative process, whether they're an artist. I work with some, celebrity actors and some musicians, and it's like the tension that happens in the creative process. It's the deep relaxation I love, but I love the conversation you're saying as well, and the joy on the other side, because it's not just sharing about it, it's also being a living embodiment of the result. And the result I want to highlight is like you're a happy woman. You're a turned on woman when you're in that creation energy and that co-creation energy, right? You're successful when you're in that energy. Does it make logical sense? No, right? But it's willing to trust the illogical nudges, the illogical guidance that is bringing you into your highest and wildest success. That from our human level of consciousness and awareness, we're not going to get there on our own. I mean, just like that same consciousness that created us here, like we didn't technically create ourselves, something created us. And obviously, we look damn good. So it's got a really good design eye. It's got really great aesthetics. Like it knows way beyond, the divine intelligence is way beyond this artificial intelligence, and I love the invitation you're inviting the listeners into, and the creatives and the entrepreneurs, especially the female. I mean, I think male can really benefit from tapping into this frequency, which is more feminine. It's more following the intuition and coming into the flow. which for men, there's more of a challenge since they love the structure. But good thing a lot of my audience is female and they can start to adopt and adapt, or abandon whatever you're saying for themselves, right? And that's something that I think is really powerful is run these experiments. And what were some of the experiments that you were like, this really works? What was like maybe a micro experiment that you ran in regards of trusting, right? Because I find, and maybe you don't, but I find that whenever we're in a new relationship, any relationship, there is trust, but there's also trust that's going to be built, right, over time, that the person has your back, that they're trustable, that they will show up, that there's energy there, right? Just like any beautiful, healthy relationship, right? It's double-sided. Was there a moment of like your micro practices or micro kind of, you mentioned like you were tested a lot earlier. Was that for you the moment that you started to really trust the co-creating, or was there other ways that you practice it as an entrepreneur versus life, just normal life?
Well, they all had to do with entrepreneurship because that is my life. My life is I'm an entrepreneur with an artist soul. I'm a creative in a lot of ways. And what I'm challenged with when I speak to some people is that you might not have the desire to show up for these kind of practices because they're so counterintuitive to our conditioning if you're not in the ring of fire. If you do not get to change your circumstances, because those first few weeks need all of you. They need you to be all hands on deck. But there was how I created almost $500,000 my first year was because of these practices. How I enrolled 50 people into this thing that I didn't even come up with. I don't even know how that happened. So do you want me to tell the story really quick?
Yeah, tell us. Yeah, tell
Okay,
us.
so here's an example of how a marketing strategy came through for me on accident. Okay. Vibes, listen, I was driving and I was like, okay, my brother had passed away. And so for a year, I I would work here and there, but I didn't have to work because my partner was taking care of me at the time. And I knew that, all right, I got to get back in the arena. But normally people will be like, okay, let me put my resume together, let me put together a job, let me figure this out, blah, 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 the whole thing. But I knew that I needed to receive what my next step was. And if I already had my next step, receive the steps for it. By first, I always have a 3-day rule. I can shift my whole point of attraction, my whole vibration in 3 days if I do it right, right? And so I got the nudge just to drive. And the drive felt really good. And I let it feel good. That's the thing. You got to let it feel good. The better you
Yes.
feel, the more you're receptive. So and I just want to even anchor that in more. It's like, okay, that sounds good. No, it's logical. The more you let in, the more you can allow the good in, the more you can allow the good in, right?
Mm-hmm.
In any
Mm-hmm.
scenario, if you can't allow a compliment to feel good and to allow and to receive that, how are you going to receive the kind of resources you need to sustain yourself? How can you
Yeah.
receive that, right? If you can't receive. And so anyway, I'm driving and for some reason, it was a sunny day and on this building, it goes 888. And I was like, ooh, I love that. It was huge. Then I'm like driving and there's this car that swifts over in front of me and it said 888 on the back. And I was like, ooh, I like that. That's another 888. And then for some reason, I think because my point of attraction, I just kept noticing 88s. I'm like, I'm having so much fun and I don't know why. So I post on my story. I'm like, guys, if you see an 88, an 888 or an infinity symbol, please send it to me because I'm having so much fun. Right. And I gave these rules. So I'm following while I'm looking at the 88s, I'm following my micro moment obedience. My body goes, go to the park. I go to the park and I don't get out of my car. I didn't even get in the park. I just drove to the park and I see ducks. And I go, how many ducks are those? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 ducks. What the heck is going on? I share that on my story. I'm like, there's 8 ducks. So then somebody goes, I found an 88. So people start interacting with me in my DMs. But what I discovered through my DMs is all the limitations that people have. So one person was like, I haven't found an 88. I found an 88, but there's no way I can find an infinity. I can't believe people are finding infinities. So I use that as an example. What's the difference between finding receiving $1,000 and $1,000,000? Your resistance to it. That's what it is. I had
Mm.
another person say, I'm trying to find an 88. That's the problem. You're not supposed to try. You're supposed to allow. So I started teaching all these energetics through my DMs. And then I'll never forget it. I was sitting in my car and something, God, source, spirit, told me, I just started typing, if you unlock 888s or 888s or infinity, once you unlock 8 of these, you're going to unlock the next level. And I was like, what is the next level? I have no idea what the next level is, but I'm having so much fun. Again, the state I'm in,
Yes.
I'm teaching people on my platform. I'm having so much fun. And then I thought about it, and I had a friend who was doing 75 hard at the time. And I was like, I'm going to do 88 aligned. That's what I'm going to do. My
Mm.
version of 75 hard is going to be 88 aligned. And what happened was, to condense this story, is after playing that game through invitation only for the people that unlocked all 88s. And when they did, they would also say, I would say, what's something else, something small you want to manifest or whatever. They're like, a sand dollar. I'm like, okay, cool, do it. And they were like, oh, I didn't find the sand dollar at the beach, but I found it on my timeline. We were just having so much fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Which
it
is
led,
important to notice though. They're staying open. They're staying open to
yes,
how and where it's going to show up. There isn't a like rigid, like, I don't see it. It's not happening looking like this, right? Which so many people in the mind and the ego wants to attach to, and they
it's
miss the manifestation magic.
exactly. And that, even one of the, to piggyback off what you just said,
Yeah.
one of the girls that said she was trying so hard, once she stopped trying, she was like doing something with children. And this little girl walks up to her. She goes, infinity, infinity, infinity. And she's like, oh my God, I got 3 infinities, right? So like, it was something small, but there's no difference. The only difference between the 88s and $1,000,000 is your resistance to it, right? So then I was like, oh my gosh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have a password protected landing page. And once they got on the landing page, I gave them the password. If they played the game all the way through, I gave them the password, and they logged in, and I said, congratulations. It was a video of me. You've unlocked your power of focus. This is what it looks like to unlock your power of focus. What would happen if for 88 days you use this same energy to create the things that you wanted to create in your life? Join me. Checkout link, right? And I didn't even know what I'm so excited about with that story is that was marketing gold. First of
Yeah.
all, that was back in selling. No one knew on my story that I was selling a thing. The people that were invited felt like you had to earn your way here. And then it was
Yes.
like, surprise, you did it. You were open enough, you were receptive enough. And 50 out of 60 of the people who played signed up. And so
Wow.
that became the first thing. And that's an example of when you get out of your own way. And it's not to negate the logical, it's to just not ignore the magical.
Yes.
You have to also do that as well. And so how I now I've done this again with creating my business. The first year I did numbers I couldn't even sustain with my nervous system, but cultivating that kind of momentum was through these same practices, but I suffered more back then. My first
Mm.
time around, I was I was I was I show up 150% for what I can, and I surrender what I cannot control, was my prayer. Like, I show up 150, I'm going to show up 150% for what I can, and I surrender the rest. And that was contracting for me. Like, my body was like showing up, my visibility was getting bigger, my me putting myself out there was really vulnerable. This is what creatives come up against. So sometimes that micro moment obedience looks like doing the thing that you don't want to do. So there was a lot
Hmm.
of that in that as well. So I don't want to, that one thing was so magical and like kind of no bumps in the road, but the other one was like lots of bumps in the road, but it led
I
to you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about that as well. Being creative entrepreneurs, it's like this whole thing of also following your pleasure or following your bliss, or as a creative entrepreneur. And I love what you said. It's like there can be the fun, magical piece that comes about, but there's also what you're saying now, which I think is important to kind of pull a little bit of that thread, is there's also the part of like being obedience and like doing the thing that's not so pleasurable, doing the thing that's hard or hard work or very, very uncomfortable in the nervous system where the sensations are like, oh my God, I think I could die. Like the reptilian brain is like, girl, you're gonna be hunted. Like, do not show up, do not talk about this. It's like, oh my God, do I do that? Do I show up like oh my, can I
Right,
do it? Right. And it's
right,
like there's also that piece which I find is speaks to a lot of creatives, especially in the online space.
right, exactly. And that's really what my mission is that the reason why I'm dedicating my time to entrepreneurs with artist souls is for this very reason. We aren't like others, period. We are all creatives. Okay. We all have that ability, but not everyone's walking in that. And so when we're learning certain strategies, but we're ignoring this part, there's something lackluster. We begin to copy and paste. We begin to find ourselves in survival. We begin to lose our innovation and our excitement around what we're doing. And we stop being the vessel and we become the machine. And
Mm,
I think that we're at a very, very beautiful place in this moment with Pluto being in Aquarius and for all other reasons. Actually, America specifically is having its Pluto return. America was
mm,
founded in when Pluto was in Aquarius. And
wow.
so lots of things happening there. But, you know, we're in a shift. And this is what I call one of my projects I'm working on is co-creative culture. It'll be a community and I think we're moving away from therapeutic culture and into co-creative culture. Therapeutic
Mm,
culture was beautiful because it gave rise to understanding our triggers and what was toxic and how to heal. And that was necessary. And where I think we're at now, that was necessary to navigate survival.
mm,
When we're moving into a state of thriving, the rules are not the same. It is co-creativity that I want. That I it's not even that I want, it's already happening with or without me. I'm just recognizing it. Co-creative culture is the next new normal, the next wave where it's not going to be abnormal to be in a co-creative mindset. It's not going to be abnormal to have all of these things at the forefront of your brain because there's limitations to therapeutic culture. Therapeutic culture says that we have to fix ourselves, that something is wrong, that we need to slow down and we need to heal before we proceed. And we pathologize so much. And that through that pathologizing, it really limits and contracts. I had my own experience where I'm like, what got me here is not getting me there. All of this, I'm getting stuck in this healing and digging and
mhm,
fixing rather than creating. And in this
mhm,
present moment, what's my rawest and most authentic thing that wants to come through in this present moment? I don't need to go back. I don't need to. It's not necessary. I can heal in motion. I call this wellness in motion, healing in motion through the creative experience because creativity, through the creative experience, through the act of creativity, it'll reveal to you who you are and who you are not
mm,
in
mhm,
the present moment. And so that's what I'm strongly connected to right now is understanding this on an even deeper level. Because co-creativity is not just co-creating with infinite intelligence, also co-creating with people, with your community. You talked about that Mario mushroom giving us a boost. That's usually the people in our communities that are those Mario mushrooms. Like who wants to
mm,
create in a vacuum anymore? Not
mhm,
me. I want to
yeah,
create with other people. The innovation and the vitality of an idea and the expansiveness that happens when we come together, especially as we decentralize power now in
yes,
this Aquarian era, then what does that mean? That we have to get back in community and see how we function as a community. So
mhm,
it's also co-creating with AI as well. So
mhm,
that's
yeah.
what I'm a long tangent.
I like what you're saying as well as we started in the beginning of like the beehive, right? It's like having the hive, which is all of us co-creating for that, not necessarily having the queen bee, but more of like this analogy of like it's all about these different hives, right? These different types of co-creative communities that are all over the place that are really symbiotic and that are harmonizing within each other, right? And can even see that within, the mycelium network. It's to talk about the mushroom boost. It's like same thing. We can look at that as like each of the different communities, like even my community crossing over with people that are in your community, which is even how we've gotten together to have this
Mm.
conversation. And that really is what I also see is where the future is going, is that the co-creative, but also that effortless symbiotic, like relating, like that we can easily and effortlessly attract what it is that we're desiring. And I mean, there are so many ways that we are seeing this in action even now with things like the wildfires that were in LA, or things like that were rallying around the elections, and things that like are happening right now in real time, where these kind of power plays or these powerful positions were burned down or were dismantled or were attacked. And the things that we're talking about, even for those that are listening, it's yes, this is like higher level spiritual knowledge and wisdom that we're sharing, but we can also bring it to like the real life tangible examples beyond just entrepreneurship, where these these principles and the philosophies of what we're sharing is happening in real time if we are, as you said earlier, listening and as we're looking. That's one of the things that I think is also, to everything that you said, is like the importance of also seeing and looking with not just the eyes of our human experience, and not even just the eyes of the soul, but looking with our imagination, which is the eye of God. Like our imagination is, in my belief, is tuning into the imagination of the divine. And that's the most powerful way to co-create. And we can't be in a imaginative or innovative space if we're also inundated with, I love what you said, the healing era. Everyone's healing, no one's thriving, we're not having space to really create. That's a big part of the reason why I'm actually living here in Puerto Rico, is to detach from all of the busyness and the noise of the city, to be in that listening, to be connected to nature, to be able to, amplify the insights that I get, the voices that are on the show, and to really listen more deeply to what's being asked, of me for the collective of where we're going. And I would say that as I was listening to all of what you were sharing, something does come forward in the sense of two pieces. One is, I feel like, and there's something that my girlfriend Rachel says, which I love, which is you can be healing and whole at the same time. You can be healing and whole at the same time. And I love that because we it's not about spiritually bypassing, like everything is fine and I'm good, in my opinion. And my belief is that when we look to what we are here to repair or heal or transcend, simply acknowledging it and sending that part love, microsecond, is enough. It's enough because it's what makes us human. And yes, we are spiritual beings, and yes, we're creative beings, but we're also human beings. And so I find the practice, and what I've been finding with some of the people that I've been working with, is when they're in those moments of like a humanness, to also make it okay to like just accept there's the human part that feels that, or there's a human part that's feeling like the collective shame or the collective pain or the collective fear. And it's going to make it so much more pleasurable to let it go, accept, and move on, and not focus on the healing, but focus on being the embodiment of love and embracing more of that feel good feeling, right? Because I believe like feeling good is our job, and that our pleasure benefits the pleasure of everyone. And the more that we can embrace both the humanness of like the collective fear or the collective shame, and we can detach from it, not bypass from it, but acknowledge it, detach from it, destigmatize it. We can just love it, and like it'll just start to naturally dissolve, like these rocks that we've just been collecting in this collective backpack that just start to fall away. But every time we look at it, we're looking at it and we're opening the backpack to allow God, spirit, the wind, nature, our body, whatever, to start to excavate and just let that backpack of the collective get lighter and lighter and lighter. Because again, I'm curious on your take, being people who are creatives and tapped into higher consciousness and God divinity, I believe like a part of our work on this planet and purpose is to elevate all those around us, and like doing some of the extra heavy lifting that maybe some in our community aren't aware of or haven't tapped into. And I feel like that is a part of some of the initiation, like I was saying earlier, that's like sometimes it's uncomfortable and sometimes you don't want to do it. And it's like, when is this going to be over? And it's like as embracing the role as like a community leader, and embracing the role as someone who is here for the highest good of the collective. And that's
Mhm.
where things are just kind of coming through in this moment of what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing and what I'm receiving, and sharing from that place of, like, for me, that's a powerful positive use of creative power. That to me is a way to use our creativity for a shared experience, a shape a reality of liberation for all beings.
Yeah. And it's pretty simple to be present. To be not pretty simple to be present, but to make it simple is, if you can just be present with what is, whether it's a feeling like you said of shame or anger or whatever it is, joy, the presence
Mhm,
with it, the presence and the acceptance of this moment and what it's revealing is enough.
mhm.
With my present moment awareness, my patterns become obvious for me to shift in motion and in real time. You know what I mean? Um,
Yes.
the digging and the fixing can get I don't know what how to articulate it, but I feel like it can work in our detriment.
Mhm,
You know
mhm.
what I mean?
I feel like it moves us in the direction that we don't wanna be going, like, in a way, it pulls us
Right.
backwards versus actually, like, catapulting and amplifying us forward into more of who we can be, like, to know the majesty of who we are, the divinity of who we can be, and to see just really how fucking amazing of a life we can create and shape if we're constantly fixated and looking at the past and digging in the ground. And I kind of use the analogy of like the garden. It's like if we're constantly in a garden that's not growing, and we're wondering and we're focused with our awareness and our emotional state and our physiology hunched over, trying to figure out, why isn't this garden growing, and what's this thing, and what's this thing, we're so fixated on the garden that's dying. Maybe the opportunity is to actually like be willing to detach and let go of your attachment to this garden needing to be the way you want it to be, and instead
Mhm.
like choose the courage to walk with beauty and walk the path of grace, and to trust that you will be provided another garden that
Mhm.
is already blossoming and blooming, and maybe all we need to do is receive the water pal and like water the garden and speak to the plants and tend to the weeds and like lighter work that's available for us, because we're always going to be doing something, but what garden are we tending to, and what garden are we focused on?
Mhm.
And so with creative energy and the garden, I would love to know for you, where does play come into your creativity and your creative flow? Where does play come in?
I mean, I think that my example that I gave is kind of like play for me, but I also take myself on creative dates where I create just for the sake of creativity, not for the sake of output. I know that that's so basic, but how many of us are actually creating just to create? I went to an actor's workshop where I got to exercise my voice, and it reflected so much of what I know about embodiment and so much. It was just so much fun. I went to I had a private Ikebana workshop. I did pottery. I went to a sensual girls' night where we had Damiana tea and there was this cellos, someone playing the cello and they had pole
Hmm.
dancing, but it was all women and it was this, there's dates that I take myself on to express my creativity and live my life. I feel like that is all play. And I feel like I embody play in a moment, like
Mm.
I'm very playful. There's two things I embody, and that's radical truth, whatever that is in the moment, and play, which are both beautiful medicines. Um, there's something radiant in any woman that I always tell women, I have friends, they go through things with their partners and things of
Mm.
like we all do. I'm like, you can shift the energy at any moment, right? At any moment, you could shift the energy. Like, it's all energy. And so one of my friends was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do Operation Bring My Spark Back." And so she started to play more and to practice appreciation and to raise her vibration and to enjoy. And all of a sudden, she's like, all these interesting things are happening in my life, like abundance and like men are coming out the woodworks. And I'm like, isn't that cool? Isn't that cool how
Yeah.
like play and joy and also the release of grief, because that was another thing I was telling my friend is that it's not to just be in your pleasure and your play and your joy all the time, because it's just, what allows more pleasure too is also increasing your capacity for your grief to be felt, and
Yes.
to be present with the thing that makes you want to turn on your phone or turn on Netflix or call a friend or avoid the self. Like your capacity to your womb is created for space to hold all of that also increases your
Mm.
capacity for its opposite, you know what I mean?
Yes, I absolutely know that, and it's like it is, and everything you're saying too reminds me of this teaching that I had brought into my women's course, which was around like the pleasure component and like in the womb space. It's like, but when a woman is able to feel the pleasure and the pain that's tied into the pleasure, right, in her womb, in her hips, in her heart, in her chest, it allows her to start to like be poetry in motion, to express, right, what is there and let it to be messy and silly or chaotic. And that's some of the best storytellers and the best poetry and art in the world comes from that ability and the capacity to be with the darkness, to dance with it, to shape with it, to not turn away from it, right? To not turn away from it. And that's something that I always talk about a lot. And, I really truly believe and embody that, the pain is where we'll find the power, and the pain is really where we'll find the pleasure. And that's what makes us very sexy, glowing goddesses and being able to be in that space. And, really the body for me and what I believe and what I teach a lot of the women is like our body is one of the most exquisite temples that we can experience bliss. I've never been to a temple around the world, and I've been to so many temples in Egypt, in Asia, in a bunch of different places. And yes, there's godliness and divinity, and in Spain, and awe and majesty. But in the temple of my own body is where I feel the most bliss, and also the most amount of reverence for the depth of like what my body could actually communicate to me through feeling and through sensation and through its own intelligence that is like birthed from the divine.
Mhm.
And that's something that I feel like more and more women are waking up to, is especially women of color, I find as well, like Middle Eastern women, on my perspective,
Mhm.
because I'm Egyptian and Lebanese. it's
Mm.
like for these women that I work with, especially, like, to embrace and destigmatize like the societal cultural expectations of like feeling that pleasure or feeling that pain or emoting it, or their own sexuality, the creativity and the energy, which I'll ask you before we end up kind of wrapping, is like just even the ability to be in the body and tell a story through motion or breath or expression and emote. It's been so taboo for so long in my culture. And that's why I love having these types of
Mm.
conversations, is like, for all of, my brown women sisters, it's like the oppression and the repression, and it's, again, like I said, destigmatizing it as like the shame, right? Like the fear, like the peace. It's not mine, right? It's not mine. It's this collective, right? Like goosebumps. It's this collective. And once we can destigmatize it and once we can detach from it, the more we can actually like own the internal landscaping and learn how to navigate inside these gorgeous, gorgeous vessels to then become in that obedient co-creative space.
Yeah, that's where healing is effective, to go back when you're carrying that oppression or those stories. Like I said in that video that you watch, is I am not oppressed. Hold on.
Yes.
Don't don't even cast that spell upon me. Don't even wag your finger and look. I don't want anyone looking at me like anything. Like, you are a woman, I'm half black, half well, I'm Afro-Indigenous and
Mm,
Albanian. So I am me, right? I'm not oppressed. Period. I don't
mhm.
have to walk into the room with those kind of assumptions. And that's where I think healing does play a powerful role in our lives, is if you are carrying those stories, you have to give them a voice. You have to validate your anger. Before I could heal anything, I had to validate that was fucked up.
Yes.
I shouldn't have been treated that way. That person abused me in this way. I had to get mad and stand up for myself and validate myself. And then once I did, I could move forward with a different kind of energy. You know what I mean? To where
Mhm.
I'm not carrying that with me. And then I'm just relaxed. The most influential person in the room, the person with the most influence, studies say, is the person who has basically relaxed. Their heart rate variability, right, is
Mhm.
grounded and relaxed, and they're congruent. That means everything's lining up. Their beliefs, their thoughts, everything's lining up. So the authenticity. So if
Yes.
you can't be the journey towards being authentic and to be grounded and relaxed in your body. You have no idea the power of that. Like, to be grounded and feel at home and like you belong and relax in your body wherever you're at is such a flex. Like,
Yes, it is.
palpable. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Because you're
100%.
just like, I don't need to do or please or perform. I am, period.
Yeah.
That's the my favorite affirmation. I am. I
Mhm.
am, and whatever's supposed to be unfolding through me gets to unfold through me.
Mhm.
And I get to be as
Absolutely.
spacious as I want in that, unapologetically.
And there's so much audacity that is required, I find, to
That's
be
my
a
favorite word.
woman, yeah, who sits in that seat of power, because it's literally sitting back, not searching, not trying to get someone, not wanting recognition, not even trying to be the most charismatic person in the room. It's actually, and I love this story about Marilyn Monroe, who
Mm,
back, I don't know if you know the story. So she was
mm-mm.
like, I'm Marilyn when I want to be Marilyn. I will turn on Marilyn in the dime. And she's like, let me prove this to you. She took a journalist in New York City and she went out as her normal self, not Marilyn Monroe. She took him to the subway. Nobody looked at her. No one said anything. They got in the subway. No one said anything to her. No one did anything. She got off the subway with this camera. She turned to him and said, do you want to see Marilyn? And he had no clue what she was talking about. With the flick of her hair and a puff of her hair, she just brought the power, the presence, and her warmth. Those three ingredients. And she's like, she is here. Suddenly, she started getting flocked by people in the subway to the point where She couldn't even get out. It got dangerous that the reporter had to escort her out from the back way because she literally almost got stampeded with everyone trying to grab her autograph. And it's like
Listen,
that, right?
what
It's
did I say
that
earlier? I said you can change your energy in a second.
second,
That's
in a
alchemy.
second. That's right.
Yes.
That is so right. And it's being in that power. You can. Absolutely. And I find that for the feminine, that is one of our greatest gifts, is that radiance. The moment she decides to give her radiance as a gift, to exude her power and her warmth, right? From a, again, not proving it, not validation, but from a deep place of like, this is who I am, and I'm not hiding, and I'm not shrinking, and I'm not pretending, to have the audacity to unabashedly be yourself and be seen, right? I think is a creative and rebellious act in itself.
Yes. Because what she's doing in that moment is also turning her, it's an invitation. So she's embodying the invitation that I am available, right? Because some women, one of my aunts, we went to go get food and she was like walking so fast. And I'm like, you are so unavailable. You haven't even seen the moon or how beautiful the stars are. You're making a beeline for this place.
Yeah.
And she wants to find someone, but I'm like, your energy is not an invitation. You can turn that off though. Sometimes I don't want my energy to be an
Right.
invitation. But
Same.
sometimes my energy is an invitation, and that's an inside out kind of radiance, like you said, that you can turn on and off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just
And
being relaxed in that.
exactly. And that's influence at its greatest, right? That's the art of also like, and from what I've seen as well, it's like the feminine magnetism. It is being open, it is being available, it is like being the ultimate invitation and invoking others without even a word
Yep.
to come into the space with you, that want to dance with
Yes.
you, that want to play with you, that want to sip, have tea with you, that want to explore what you got going on, because they just feel so good in your presence and they don't even know what's going on, but they know they love
Yes.
it and they know they
Yeah.
want it.
Because you're emitting that. I was at the beach the other day and this guy was singing a song to his wife and they were really old. And I was like, I just had to snap. And then they started dancing like together. And then I was dancing and it was a whole moment because it was infectious, but it wasn't performance. Even in the actors class that I went to, there was someone in there that was being like, rah, in people's faces. And they were
Yeah.
like, you're performing too much. So even in acting class, it's not, they said, what this instructor said is like, I don't want you to perform. I want you to increase your capacity to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be seen in this story that you're coming on the stage with? Can you be grounded in that? So instead of being like, it was
Yeah.
like, something as subtle as space and silence is more impactful than because some people do that with they're like, okay, I want to be sexy. I want to be, and that's all part of the experimentation. But I'm just
Yeah.
telling you that you don't have to perform sensuality, perform femininity. I'm not even going to go there, but
Well, I actually just did a post today around performative when it's the feminine. And that's something that, again, so we can get into a whole deeper conversation around. But I think to tie it back into like, you can also perform your creativity or you can share your creativity. Same thing with women. You can either
yes,
be in your femininity and like, because you're connected and you've accessed that and you're tapped in, or you can perform and pretend to be feminine because of the hair
yes,
and the bag and the nails, but you're walking around stiff as a board and not available to life. And you're in your logic and you're constantly downward spiraling, wondering why guys are not texting you back when, girl, it's like, take a deep breath, relax your womb, sit back in your seat, like receive what God and life has in store for you better than your wildest dreams. Like, can you
mhm,
sip in and drop into that?
yes, amen.
Yeah. I love that. Well, this has been so fun playing. And one thing that I'll tie in at the very end, I'd love to know, how do you, not even how do you, it's not even the right question. It's more of like what's coming through is like, I guess it's more of a reflection. I noticed that of all the guests that have mentioned working with creativity and power, I notice how much there is an interweaving in the story that you share with your sensuality and your creativity.
Hmm.
You talked about intimacy, and you talked about intimacy and creativity being two sides of the same coin.
Mhm.
As I'm hearing you, it sounds like it's also like if the coin has that little wrap around the coin, right? There's like a little circle that goes around the coin. I get this visualization of like sensuality, like tying this whole coin together. At least that's my
No, I
interpretation of
love it.
energetics of what I receive.
I am very sensual. I'm not like when people call me sexy, I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm sensual. That's the
Mm,
vibe. That's my brand. I get that. Because it's your senses, right?
yes.
To listen is to be sensitive,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And so like, one of my feminine embodiment teachers was like, a man's favorite place or anyone's favorite, like most men's favorite place is to be inside of a woman's body. So that doesn't mean that like physically, that can mean with your, like your sensations that you're emoting and you're feeling, or just your own presence with your own senses. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So um I think that like I don't know what you're asking in specifically, but the other day I was writing, and if I hadn't been sensitive to follow the impulse of what I wanted to research and then follow this impulse, I wouldn't have gotten to this really magical, juicy place that I have gotten that like birthed this whole idea. And I think that's part of it is like feeling your sensations in your body and what they're communicating to you at all times. And then also just being present with your sensations while you're in a room. You'd
Mhm.
you'd be surprised how many people are lunging energetically outward and trying to live in someone else's mind and be outside of their body energetically, and the power of just like feeling my pleasure from within, or
Yes.
feeling my senses from within, or even feeling my anger from within. There's been times in relationships where I'm hearing something I don't want to hear from a partner, and I'm feeling a lot of emotions inside, and I'm feeling anger coursing through my body, and I breathe and I be present with that
Yes.
instead
Yeah.
of "Ah," whatever your reaction is. It's hmm. Because when I'm present with it, I'm present with clarity.
Mhm.
Because just as my pleasure or my joy or my contraction or my expansion is providing information for me, because frequency carries information, so does my anger and my hurt. And when I can communicate from that place, I've found so much repair available in my relationships, and respect and dignity for myself, versus when I let my senses overcome me and it stops being sensual and it starts being, this reactive, you
Yes.
know, uncontrollable behavior. I think the opposite of that is sensuality, even in a moment of anger, is when you can tap into your senses and express that. But I'm not sure. I wasn't quite sure on your question. Sorry. Like I don't know if
No, no, girl, you nailed it. I mean, that's
okay.
exactly what I was seeing and feeling, and that's what you voice, which is it's just spot on. I mean, again, you're moving through your body, you're listening through your body, you're slowing down, right? To like be with the sensation. Like,
Right.
and there's a misinterpretation that sensuality, right, is sexuality, that it's
Yes.
I'm a sensual woman, which means now people see me again, going back to like the ideas, right? The dismantling and the destigmatizing of even sensuality. It's not to do with sexual energy and being sexy and being on display, or even the invitation. Like sensuality is the ability to be with and experience the moment through our senses. That is all of our
Presence. Present.
senses,
Yes.
the sensations, the contraction, the expansion, the heat, the cool, the texture,
Yeah.
maybe a smell, maybe a color. Sometimes our anger might taste a certain way that we don't even notice because we're not present with the sensation of our taste when we're angry, or the
Mhm.
sensation of like an idea that comes through from the body, right? And as you said, which makes sense, like you had a feminine embodiment coach. I'm like, okay, that's amazing because you
And I
work.
taught feminine embodiment for years.
Oh, there you go. See, so there's
Yeah.
also that tie as those that are listening in here as the audience. It's like I'm just tying in. Notice how all of these practices, sensuality, being in the body,
Being
being with the
regulated.
senses, regulating
Yes.
nervous system, being with breath, like how these are all super, super beneficial for any and every area and aspect of your life.
And that's how you get to play.
Yes.
Exactly what you just said. Without the relaxation, without the taking in your senses, without the presence, it's really difficult to be playful. It's really difficult to be available because you're in your head. You know, it's even
Yeah.
difficult. One thing that I help people with is articulating themselves through their messaging, whether we're writing their book or we're speaking on stage or we're being on video on their social media. Some people can get blocked because they're shooting up, and I'm like, relax into creativity. Open
Mm,
up your senses, open up your receptors, be in a state of allowing. Now, what do you want to say? And
mhm,
sometimes it's like, I don't have anything to say. Perfect. That's okay. That your body is saying, you know what? I don't know right now. I'm gonna have to think about that. Thank you. Just having that spaciousness to be able to emit authentically. What do they say? Authenticity. I haven't fact checked this, but TikTok University says that authenticity is the highest vibration, right? So if authenticity
interesting.
potentially is
Yeah,
the highest vibration, I know it's what makes you most influential,
yeah.
then being in touch with your senses and the present moment and to be relaxed makes you the most available to be in your highest frequency potentially.
Mhm. I would agree with that, and the most magnetic, I would add as well.
Yes, yes.
This has been such a pleasure, such a
Yeah.
pleasure, and how can everyone connect with you? I mean, we'll put it in the show notes as well. Your Instagram, is that the best way,
Yeah,
or
the best way to connect with me is Loralei Bayette on my Instagram. I'm also coming out with a course in a few weeks called Alchemy and Audacity, where I take people through the alchemical process of creativity while we are all pushing ourselves to be as audacious as we can in our expression, not performance. That could look like something else for anybody. But if you've been feeling like you want to move from resistance to receiving ideas, opportunities, finances. If you want to move from safety, cultivating safety, to audacity, because we need both, but it's a through line. If you want to move from safety to audacity and resistance to receiving, then you probably want to check that out. It's going to be fun, and I'm going to be doing it with you guys. So come join
Ooh.
me, come play, Josephina, come
Woo!
play, come
Woo!
play.
That's a great invitation for play. That's a
Yeah.
great invitation for play. We'll make sure to include that in all the show notes as well with the link. And if you guys any questions, like reach out to her. She's incredible. Make sure you follow along with her and her journey. And it's been
Yeah,
so fun getting to know you, getting to play, flow, co-create in this
yeah.
episode. And yeah, it's been really such a pleasure. Really, really great to connect with another powerful woman who's, being in her dharma and her purpose and spreading goodness into the world, girl. You're doing an awesome job. So
Thanks for
keep doing
having
it.
me, Queen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. See you guys on the next time.